Good to see you again. We've got 4 Chan posts for tonight that are deeply dark. Material that's brutal and unrelenting. These threads matter. Like the video, subscribe, turn the volume up, and let's begin. In February 2011, I was working for the city and handled noise complaints around the industrial parts of Baltimore. Most of my calls were boring. A machine running after hours, a truck unloading too early, a neighbor playing music through a thin wall. I would drive out, talk to whoever was there, write down what I found, and move on. The complaint that sent me to the warehouse district near Curtis Bay looked like another one of those. The address was an old storage building off a side road near the docks. The place had been closed for years, according to our records. The caller had reported hearing a machine running inside almost every night around the same time. He said it sounded like a large metal cutter or press. He also said the building had no power. I remember thinking that part was probably wrong. People hear things at night. Pipes knock. Old buildings make noises. A lot of complaints came from people who were already annoyed and looking for a reason to call. I figured I would check the breaker, confirm there was no activity, and close the report. My partner that night was a guy named Mike. He had been with the department longer than me and had the habit of bringing a gas station coffee into the truck, even when it was already cold. "You think this one is another ghost factory?" he said when we parked across from the building. "It's a noise complaint, Mike." "Yeah, but the building is empty. Those are always the fun ones." It was around 11 p.m. The street was almost completely empty. The only light came from a few security lamps on nearby businesses. The warehouse looked like a dark box with broken windows near the roof. The paint on the loading doors was faded and peeling. I grabbed my flashlight and paperwork. Mike stayed in the vehicle because he was finishing a call and said he would come in if I needed him. The first thing I noticed was the sound. It was faint from the street, but once I walked closer, I could hear it. A steady mechanical noise coming from inside. Not a random bang or a pipe. It had a pattern. A low motor sound followed by a sharp metal impact every few seconds. I stood there for a minute trying to figure out where it was coming from. Then I walked back to the truck. Mike lowered his phone. "You heard it?" "Yeah." So the complaint was right. He looked toward the warehouse. "You getting someone to open it?" I called the number listed for the property owner. It went straight to a disconnected message. That was when I stopped feeling like it was just a paperwork problem. I checked the doors. The main entrance was locked. The side entrance had a chain around it, but the chain was old and loose. The lock looked like it had been replaced recently. I radioed the situation in and told Mike I was going inside to check for a possible unauthorized operation. He grabbed his jacket and started walking over. "Thought I was staying warm," he said. "You changed your mind." "Yeah, the coffee got boring." We went through the side door. The smell inside was the first thing that hit me. Old dust, oil, and something like wet cardboard. My flashlight moved across stacks of empty pallets and rusted equipment. The sound was louder now. It was coming from deeper inside the building. We followed it past the main floor. The strange part was that the warehouse looked abandoned, but someone had been maintaining a path through it. There was no trash blocking the way, no broken glass where we walked. The floor was dirty, but there were fresh footprints in some of the dust. Mike noticed them too. "Someone is using this place." I nodded. We moved slower after that. The machine sound led us to a room at the back that should have been an office. The door was closed. I put my hand near the handle, but didn't open it right away. The sound stopped. Just stopped. Mike looked at me. "You didn't touch anything, right?" "No." We waited. A few seconds later, the machine started again. I opened the door. Inside was not an office. There was a desk, several monitors, a folding chair, and a mess of cables running along the floor. A small heater was plugged into a power strip. Someone had turned the room into a control station. The monitors showed camera feeds. At first I thought they were cameras inside the warehouse. They weren't. They showed houses. I stepped closer to the screens. Each monitor had a different view. A living room, a driveway, a kitchen, a hallway. I recognized one of the houses across the street from the warehouse. The camera was pointed through a window. Mike stopped beside me. "Are those live?" I didn't answer because I was already looking. The images were moving, a television flickering in one room, a person walking past a kitchen counter, a dog sleeping on a couch. The warehouse noise was coming from another monitor on the desk. It was a video feed of an old machine sitting in a different part of the building. The machine was running, but it wasn't connected to anything. I walked around the desk. There were handwritten notes beside the monitors, addresses, times, small comments about lights being turned on and people leaving their homes. Mike picked one up. "Don't touch that," He dropped it immediately. I took out my camera and started photographing the room. I knew I needed proof before anyone could say we were wrong or that we had broken in for no reason. Then one of the monitors changed. A camera view from inside a house disappeared. A new image appeared. It was the warehouse hallway outside the room. We were on the screen. Neither of us moved. Mike whispered, "Someone is here." I looked toward the door. Nothing. The machine noise continued in the background. I grabbed my radio and called for assistance. The signal inside the building was weak. I got only pieces of my own voice back. Then we heard something. A door opening somewhere near the loading area, not the main entrance, a smaller door. Mike looked at me and pointed toward the hallway. We turned off our flashlights. For a few seconds there was no sound except the machine and our breathing. Then footsteps. Slow. Coming closer. I took the camera from my pocket and put it away. We were not going to wait around and see who walked in. We moved through the back of the warehouse toward the loading doors. The exit was blocked by old equipment, but there was a smaller opening beside it. The metal door was stuck halfway. Mike pushed it. It made a loud scraping noise. The footsteps stopped. We got outside. The cold air hit my face and I could smell the harbor nearby. Diesel from trucks, salt from the water. The normal sounds of the city were suddenly louder than anything inside. We went straight to the vehicle. Nobody followed us. We reported everything we found. The photos were enough for supervisors to take it seriously. Police went out with investigators the next morning. The warehouse was empty. Not abandoned, empty. The monitors were gone. The cables were cut and removed. The room looked like nobody had been inside for years. Even the machine that had been making the noise was gone. The only thing left was dust and a few marks on the floor where equipment had been sitting. A few days later, several homeowners near the warehouse received envelopes. Nobody knew who sent them. Inside were photographs of their bedrooms. The investigation never gave me much information after that. They told us the building had been cleared out before anyone arrived and that they were still trying to figure out who had been using it. I heard later that the property was sold and the whole building was torn down. The official report listed it as an unauthorized occupation with stolen equipment and illegal surveillance devices. That was all anyone ever told us. The last photo I took that night was the one that bothered me the most. It showed the monitor wall from the control room. In the corner of one screen, before the camera feed changed, there was a view of the warehouse entrance. Someone had been standing there watching us. A shot hit my drone while I was watching a man drag a blood-stained mattress out of a hatch in the woods. It was October 2021. I shot real estate videos around Boise. The job that day was a vacant house north of Highway 21, past Lucky Peak and up a narrow road that turned to washboard dirt. The agent Kelly gave me the lockbox code and warned me that cell service dropped out in the area. The owner lived in Oregon. The place sat on 6 acres of pine and scrub, with an older cabin across the lower fence line. Kelly said the neighbor was named Wade. I arrived around 11. It had rained the night before, and the driveway smelled like wet dirt and crushed pine needles. Red mud kept sticking to my boots. The house was small, cedar-sided, with a detached garage. I filmed the rooms and exterior. With the power off, the place smelled like dust and old carpet. The last part was the drone footage. I used the DJI Mavic 2 Pro. I launched beside the garage, did a slow orbit, then climbed to show the ridgeline and a pale strip of the reservoir farther south. I was bringing the drone lower over the back acreage when I noticed a square shape under some branches. At first I thought it was a water tank or an old concrete pad. The parcel map showed a utility easement near that side, so it seemed normal. I angled the camera down and moved closer. It was a hatch. The top was covered with dirt and pine needles, but one edge stood open. Corrugated metal was set into the slope. Deadfall hid the path leading to it. A man came out while I was hovering above. He was carrying one end of a bare mattress, the other end dragged over the ground. A dark red-brown stain covered the middle, wide enough to see clearly on the controller screen. I leaned closer, trying to make sense of it. My first thought was that someone had killed a deer and used the mattress in a truck bed. It was Idaho. People did strange things during hunting season. Then the man stopped and looked up. The drone was about 80 feet above him. He found it immediately. He dropped the mattress, walked to a tree, and picked up a rifle. I pushed the drone higher. A sharp crack came from the woods. The picture tilted sideways, showing branches spinning against the sky. Then the feed went gray. I stood beside the garage holding the controller. A second shot echoed off the slope. I grabbed my camera bag and ran to my white Subaru Outback. I tried 911. No service. One bar appeared lower in the driveway, but the call failed. Then I heard an engine coming up the road. There was no safe place to turn around below the house. The shoulder dropped into a drainage ditch, so I pulled forward and parked beside the garage. A dark green pickup came around the bend and stopped at the driveway. The driver waited for a few seconds, then rolled up. He looked about 50, gray beard, brown work jacket, red knit cap. I couldn't see a rifle in the cab. He got out smiling and raised one hand. "You lose a drone?" I kept the door closed and lowered the window a few inches. "Yeah," I said, "battery issue." He looked through the rear glass at my equipment. I heard it hit the trees, sounded expensive. He walked closer but stopped short of the window. Wet dirt was smeared across his jacket. One cuff was darker than the other. "I'm Wade," he said. "I own the next lot." I nodded but didn't give him my name. "You want help finding it?" "No, I have GPS." His expression changed slightly. He looked at the controller on the passenger seat. "GPS, huh? The battery probably came loose. I'll come back with the agent." For a moment, he just watched me through the gap in the window. The car smelled like cold coffee and my damp jacket. Wade smiled again. "Weather moves in fast up here," he said. "Best find it now." "I've got another appointment." He stepped back. "Suit yourself." He returned to his truck and drove toward the upper end of the road. I watched until the trees blocked him. I waited about 30 seconds, started the Subaru, and backed out. The steering pulled hard. Both passenger side tires were flat. Each sidewall had a clean cut. I hadn't heard the truck return or footsteps near the car. The wet gravel should have made noise, but I had been focused on Wade. He must have cut them while he was talking to me. I tried 911 again. Nothing. The kitchen phone line was dead. I locked the doors and checked the windows. I still had a second drone. It was a Mavic Mini I carried for backup shots. The battery was charged. My idea was to launch it behind the house, fly it down the road, and use it to get someone's attention. I didn't know if it would work, but sitting inside felt worse. Before I could set it up, the pickup returned. It stopped somewhere below the driveway. The engine shut off. A minute later, Wade called from outside. "Hey, camera guy." I stayed quiet. "I found part of your drone." His boots made slow taps across the deck. "I can leave it by the door." The doorknob turned. He tried it once, then harder. I crouched behind the kitchen counter with my phone in one hand and a fireplace poker in the other. If he had the rifle, the poker was useless. Wade knocked. "You all right in there?" I didn't answer. The deck went quiet. Then gravel crunched beside the garage. I moved to the front room and looked through a slit in the curtain. His truck was parked downhill with the driver's door open. Wade was walking toward the back of the house. He had the rifle. I went through the laundry room and opened a side door behind the garage. The hinge squeaked. I froze, but Wade kept moving on the other side of the house. The ground dropped sharply into brush. I took the Mini, controller, and phone, then slid down the slope on my heels. Cold bark scraped my palm when I caught myself on a fallen pine. Sap stuck to my fingers. From there, I could see the rear corner of the house. Wade came around with the rifle across his chest. He checked the open door, then looked downhill. I lowered my head. "You're making this harder," he called. There was no anger in his voice. He sounded annoyed. He started down the slope. I moved sideways through the brush, keeping the fallen pine between us. Branches caught on my jacket. The drone case bumped against my hip, so I took out the Mini and left the case under a bush. About 50 yards from the house, I found a shallow ditch with water running through dead leaves. I lay against the bank and powered on the controller. The startup chime sounded much louder than it was. Wade stopped walking. I heard the click of his safety. I launched the Mini from my palm. It rose through a gap, clipped a twig, and steadied. A shot cracked above me. The Mini kept flying. I sent it toward the road and pointed the camera down so I could follow the pale dirt between the trees. The feed lagged every few seconds. Battery showed 91%. Behind me, Wade moved faster. I crawled along the ditch until it curved away from the house. Mud soaked through one knee. The water smelled like old metal. The drone reached the lower bend where Wade had parked. His truck was empty. I flew past it and kept going downhill. The road disappeared under tree cover twice. I had to climb above the canopy, which exposed the Mini to wind. The image shook, but the signal held. Wade was somewhere above the ditch. "Come on out," he said. "I just want the card." That told me he didn't know the video was stored on the first drone. He probably thought I had a memory card in my camera bag. The signal dropped to 2 bars. Battery was at 74%. Then the Mini cleared the last trees and reached the wider road near a trailhead. I saw parked horse trailers, but no people. I flew farther toward Highway 21. The connection warning flashed. Wade fired again. The shot hit the bank near my shoulder. Dirt scattered over my phone screen. I rolled into the ditch and almost dropped the controller. The Mini was still moving. A white pickup appeared on the road below. I dropped the drone to windshield height and flew in front of it. The truck braked hard. I rocked the Mini left and right, then switched on the landing light and flashed it while moving back toward the mountain road. The driver pulled over. A man and woman got out. The man pointed at the drone. The woman took out her phone. I flew toward them, then back uphill. After the second pass, the man got into the truck and followed. Wade saw the vehicle before I did. I heard him moving away through the brush fast now. The white pickup came around the lower bend with the horn blaring. I stood and waved both arms. The driver stopped beside Wade's truck. His name was Eric. The woman was Dana. She already had 911 on the phone because their carrier had service closer to the highway. Wade had vanished by the time deputies arrived. They found his cabin empty. They found my first drone in pieces near the hatch, along with the mattress. The stain was not from a deer. Inside the bunker, they found a man named Travis, alive in a locked room. He had been badly hurt. They also found the body of a woman named Renee. I gave the deputies the drone footage. Kelly later said the house had been taken off the market. Wade was arrested 3 days later near Mountain Home after a gas station clerk recognized his truck. A detective called me afterward and played an audio clip. He asked if I knew the voice. The sentence was, "You're making this harder." I identified him before the recording ended. It was January 2018, while I was working nights at a small service station, off I-70 in western Kansas. The place was about 30 miles outside Hays, far enough from the bigger towns that after midnight you could go an hour without seeing another car. The station wasn't a gas station anymore. It used to be one, but the pumps had been removed years before I started there. The owner kept the building open as a repair shop for trucks and farm equipment. We mostly handled tire changes, batteries, and small engine work. My shift was usually boring. I would lock the front doors at 10, finish any paperwork, then wait until morning unless a trucker needed help. That night, I had 10 minutes left before closing. I remember looking at the clock above the office door because I was already thinking about getting home. The heater in the waiting area made a clicking sound every few minutes, and the whole building smelled like old coffee and motor oil. I had a radio playing quietly behind the counter, but the signal kept fading in and out because of the weather. It was cold that week. The kind of cold where the metal tools in the garage hurt your hands if you grabbed them without gloves. At 9:50, headlights appeared near the far end of the parking lot. A black SUV rolled in slowly and stopped near the edge of the property, almost behind the old storage containers. It wasn't parked near the office or the lights. It was sitting in the darkest part of the lot. I watched it for a few seconds. The driver got out and walked toward the building. He looked around 40, maybe a little younger. He wore a gray jacket and jeans. Nothing about him stood out at first. He knocked on the locked front door. I opened it halfway. "Sorry, we're closing," I said. The man looked back toward the SUV. "I know. I wouldn't bother you if I had another option. It died on me about a minute ago." He introduced himself as Derek. He said he was heading east and the vehicle suddenly lost power. He asked if I could at least take a quick look. Normally I would have said no. Company rules were pretty clear about not taking new jobs after closing. But we were in the middle of nowhere, and leaving someone stranded in January wasn't something I wanted to do. I grabbed my flashlight and followed him outside. The SUV was an older model, covered with road salt. The hood was already open. That was the first thing I noticed. The engine wasn't hot, not warm, not even a little. I had driven enough vehicles to know what a recently running engine felt like. Even in the cold, there should have been some heat. The metal under the hood was the same temperature as the air. Derek stood beside me. "Battery, maybe?" he asked. "Could be," I said. I checked the terminals with my flashlight. The battery was fine. Then I saw the negative cable. It was disconnected. Not loose, not corroded. Someone had removed it. The bolt was sitting in the corner of the engine bay. I looked at Derek. "You know this cable is off, right?" He stared at it for a second too long. "No, I don't." I expected him to look surprised. Instead, he just looked annoyed. "Could it have shaken loose?" I reached down and touched the cable. "No, somebody took it off." He didn't answer. The parking lot lights buzzed above us. Somewhere behind the building, a piece of loose metal tapped against the wall in the wind. I put the cable back on and tightened it. When I closed the hood, Derek opened the driver's door. "Thanks," he said. The way he said it felt strange, but I didn't have a reason to argue. I started walking back toward the office. Then I heard him call my name. I stopped. That got my attention because I wasn't wearing a name tag and I hadn't told him my name. I turned around. What? Derek was standing by the open door. You work here alone every night? I didn't answer right away. Why? He smiled a little. No reason, just asking. I walked back inside. I locked the front door behind me and went straight to the office window. The SUV was still parked there. Derek wasn't getting in. He was just standing beside it looking toward the building. I thought maybe he was waiting to see if the repair worked. That was the explanation I gave myself. Maybe the battery connection was bad and he wanted to make sure. A few minutes passed, he finally got into the SUV. The engine started. I watched the headlights come on, then he turned them off. That made no sense. He sat there for another minute with the vehicle running in the dark. I picked up the phone on the desk. We didn't have great cell service inside the building, so the landline was what we used. I was about to call my manager when I noticed the SUV's passenger side door was slightly open. I grabbed my coat and stepped toward the garage entrance. I wasn't trying to be brave, I just wanted to know what he was doing before he left. The SUV was empty, the driver's door was open, the engine was still running. Derek? No answer. I walked closer and shined my flashlight inside. The passenger seat had a backpack on it, the rear seats were folded down. That's when I saw the bag. It was a black duffel sitting behind the driver's seat. I don't know why I looked inside. Maybe because the whole situation already felt wrong. Maybe because he had disappeared and left the vehicle running. I opened the zipper a few inches. Inside was a set of clothes, a pair of jeans, a dark sweatshirt, a jacket. They looked close to my size. Under the clothes was a small bag containing zip ties and a set of handcuffs. I closed the zipper immediately. I stepped away from the SUV. My first thought was that there had to be another explanation. Maybe he was transporting equipment. Maybe he worked security. Maybe the clothes belonged to someone else. I stood there trying to make the pieces fit. Then I heard the garage door motor start. I turned around. The main gate at the entrance to the repair bay was coming down. That gate was controlled by a remote kept inside the office. Nobody outside had one. The only way to activate it was from the small control box on the wall near my desk. I ran. The garage opening was already halfway closed. I dove underneath it and hit the concrete floor hard enough to scrape my elbow. The gate slammed shut behind me. I was inside the repair bay. The office was on the other side of the locked interior door. I pulled out my phone and tried calling my manager. No signal. I tried again. Nothing. Then I heard footsteps outside, not running, walking, slowly. Derek? No answer. A few seconds later, he spoke. You should have stayed inside. His voice was calm. I moved away from the gate. How did you open that? He didn't respond. Instead, he said my name. Then he said my home address. I froze. I had never told him where I lived. He walked around the building, his boots crunching on the gravel outside. You live off the old highway, right? Near that white fence? I didn't say anything. The repair bay was dark except for the emergency lights above the doors. I moved behind a large tire machine and tried to keep quiet. Derek kept walking. I don't want this to be difficult. I grabbed a heavy wrench from the workbench. I don't know if I plan to use it. I just needed something in my hand. He stayed outside for several minutes. Every so often, he would say my name. Then he would say another detail about me. Things he shouldn't have known. How long I'd worked there. What kind of truck I drove. The fact that I usually left through the back door after locking up. I never found out how he knew those things. Then everything went quiet. I stayed behind that machine for what felt like hours, but it was probably less than 20 minutes. Eventually, I heard the SUV start. The tires moved slowly across the gravel. Then it was gone. I didn't leave the repair bay until sunrise. When my coworker Mike arrived, I told him what happened. He thought Derek might have been planning to rob the place or steal a vehicle. He called the police while I checked the security cameras. The footage from that night was missing. Not damaged. Missing. The officer who came out asked about the remote for the gate. I told him it was always kept in the office drawer. He checked the drawer. It wasn't there. The strange part was that the previous employee who worked the evening before had quit suddenly. His name was Tom, and nobody had been able to reach him after he stopped showing up. 3 days later, police found Derek's SUV in a field several miles south of the interstate. It had been burned completely. The plates were registered to a vehicle that belonged to a man who had been reported missing months earlier. I don't know who Derek was. I don't know if that was even his real name. I only know that a stranger drove onto my lot 10 minutes before closing, brought everything he needed, and somehow knew exactly where I would be standing. That's where we leave the questions hanging and the mystery intact for now. I'm grateful you made the full journey with me tonight. Which thread's living in your head? Tell me below. There's so much more waiting in the depths. Don't sleep easy. I'll be waiting in the next chapter.